Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the latest edition of the Woke Bros. Of course, I'm Big Wos, aka Wosny Lambre, joined as always by my co-host, my brother, my partner, my comrade, Nando Villa, out on the west side of Los Angeles with his leather-bound books and his beachfront property. What's going on, Nando?
Yeah, bro. How's the valley treating you? How's it going? How's it looking?
The
over
valley's good. It's been cold as shit. I know it's just as cold over on the west side, if not colder.
Yeah.
But it's been damn cold these past few days. I've been almost tempted to throw the heat on, but
yeah,
the New York cheap West Indian in me just won't allow it.
That's why you got the hoodie on. You know, when I think about the valley, I just think about greasy diners and like adult video stores. You know, like that they probably still have. Where you can, like, rent
and there are a
DVDs.
nice amount of adult shops, gift shops, which if you're not too busy, you can come check out sometime. On today's show, Spain is introducing a trial balloon of a program for the 4-day work week. I know you guys have heard of the siesta, but Spain is taking it up another notch. And they're going to try to introduce this radical thing of just like, we could probably get everything done in 4 days and let people be with their family, do their hobbies, have some sort of work-life balance. It's crazy. It's radical, I know, in America where people, get lauded and clap for people who don't sleep. Also on today's show, things are going pretty cool with the vaccine rollout. Read somewhere that 20% of Americans have gotten at least the first dosage of the vaccine already, which is incredible when you consider how botched the pandemic was handled just generally. But because we've been getting nothing but good news on the vaccine front, some chicanery was not far behind. And that comes in the form of Big Pharma being the greedy, avaricious, mother-sucking, blood-sucking cocksuckers that they are. And me and Nando are going to get into that for you guys. It just, man, some of this stuff will send a shiver down your spine. But first, as you guys all know, we're recording this on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. By now, most of you have gotten that stimulus check direct deposited to that account, boy. Woo, I know people that got 3 kids that got damn near 5 G's. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are very, very happy today. Up and down my timeline about the stimulus. Obviously, we're excited for you guys. Of course, that stimulus, as we told you guys on Woke Bros, had to be passed via a process called reconciliation, which didn't need a filibuster-proof supermajority to pass. So the Dems could pass a freaking stimulus that has 70% approval rating by the American people. Would not have passed but for this budgetary maneuver. So now that that's through, we've moved on to the next thing, Nando, which is the rest of the Biden administration's agenda, which they're going to need to pass with either a supermajority in the Senate or an abolition of the filibuster. Joe Biden went on ABC News, of course, gave a tepid Democratic, typical Dem establishment response, said, well, I'd be cool with, just coming back to the speaking filibuster. Make these guys actually have to stand there and talk, as if they couldn't figure out a way to do that if they were dedicated to doing that. This is on the heels of Monday. Dick Durbin came out on the Senate floor and was basically like, look, man, I'm somebody who believes in the institution, but we got to get rid of this thing. My Precious Dreamers Act had big majorities. We didn't have super majorities, but I had 55, 56 senators on board. I brought it up 6 times. 5 times it was defeated by a filibuster. This is ridiculous. We can't even do government. To which our friend, your friend, Mitch McConnell, minority leader of the Senate, had this to say. Quote, some Democrats believe this would be a tidy trade-off if they could just break the rules with the razor-thin majority. That's not what would happen. So let me say this very clearly to all 99 of my colleagues. Nobody serving in this chamber can even begin to imagine what a completely scorched earth Senate would look like. That's a nice little veiled threat. And then basically McConnell essentially says that this is what would happen. This is the threat that he makes that would happen if the Dems abolish the filibuster and stop letting the tyranny of minority rule, govern our entire lives. This is what Mitch McConnell proposes what would happen to us, guys. Quote, as soon as Republicans wound up back in the saddle, we wouldn't just erase every liberal change that hurt the country. We'd strengthen America with all kinds of conservative policies with zero input from the other side. How about this? National right to work for working Americans, defunding Planned Parenthood and sanctuary cities on day one, a whole new era of domestic energy production, sweeping new protections for conscience and the right to life of the unborn, concealed carry reciprocity in all 50 states and the District of Columbia, massive hardening of security on the southern border, Nando. Mitch McConnell threatened us with a good time. He threatened to do democracy in the conservative tent if ever they got back in power. Nando, what say you?
I think it's an empty threat. I mean, we've seen what they've done while they're in power. They couldn't, for example, muster 50 votes to repeal Obamacare, which they tried to do, if you remember.
Remember Obamacare.
Yeah,
it's instructive.
In 2017, it was around there, like early Trump years. They tried to repeal Obamacare, and they didn't remember the McCain thumb down thing. Mm-hmm. They couldn't do it because the fact of the matter is that at the end of the day, it's very, very difficult to muster up the votes to pass things that are truly, really unpopular. And if the Democrats did abolish the filibuster, and they were smart, which is a big if, they would pass all kinds of things that would make the United States more democratic. And if they did do that, it would really help their chances electorally, just simply from the matter of fact that there are more Democrats in America than Republicans, like a lot more. I mean, I think if you look, like right now we have a 50-50 Senate. We have 50 Republican senators and 50 Democratic senators. The 50 Democratic senators represent 40 million more Americans. It's crazy. Like, it's just, there just are more Democrats in the country. It's just that the Republicans are able to rule by minority rule because of the way the rules are written. For example, like if the Democrats abolish the filibuster and then pass this new version of the Voting Rights Act, which is very expansive, like much more expansive than the 1965 Voting Rights Act, would essentially, make voting in this country infinitely more easier, which would expand the electorate, which tends to help Democrats. If they pass the PRO Act, which would greatly expand the power of organized labor, which again helps Democrats at the ballot box. If they passed statehood for the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C., which is not represented, those people are not represented in Congress and Senate. That would vastly expand their chances of controlling the Senate because it would be 2 automatic Democratic senators. So things like that would just make the country more democratic, and it would make it much harder for Mitch McConnell to pass these like incredibly unpopular things. All of those things that he just mentioned are incredibly unpopular. Like if the country were more democratic, the citizens would be able to punish Republicans more for their unpopular policies. Republicans can thrive in a restriction of democracy, which is why they're so focused on restricting voting rights all over the country. I mean, hundreds of voter restriction bills are being considered right now all over this country in all the states where Republicans control the state legislature and things like that. So more democracy is a good thing because, contrary to popular belief, the American people are to the left of the political system. They just are. Poll after poll, like the American people want the government to provide health care. They want the minimum wage hike.
Love the stimulus. It's like the
joint
that Biden just passed has a 70% approval rating across all Americans. That's ridiculous.
Black, white, brown, Democrat, Republican, everything. Yeah,
everybody loves it.
Everybody loves it. So So more democracy would be a good thing in and of itself, just because people on the whole are more progressive than the political system. The only reason why the political system is able to get away with passing all these conservative things and not listening to the people is because it is fundamentally anti-democratic. And the filibuster in particular is just one of those things. Like, I did a whole segment on it for Jacobin where I went deep into the whole history of the filibuster. And it's one of those things that if the American people knew how it came to be, they wouldn't believe you because it's so stupid. It really is just a mistake. It's a mistake in the way the Senate was designed. You know, there's a thing in which when you have a parliamentary body like the Senate or Parliament or any other kind of legislative body in any democracy, you need a rule to decide when you stop arguing about a certain bill and just freaking vote already. You know?
Yeah.
They forgot to include that when they designed the Senate. So in theory, you could be arguing about a particular bill forever.
And that's what the filibuster is. It's an extension of this theoretical argument. Yeah. Which you can bypass the theoretical argument by having a supermajority, which means 60 votes. Yeah. And again, the reason why this is important, because all you'll ever hear for the defense of this crap is not anything other than the norms and the sanctity of the Senate. And it's like, bro, after 4 years of Donald Trump completely pissing all over every single presidential norm, governmental norm that
shit doesn't matter.
You can even think of, and it just proved like this shit don't matter. And most importantly, man, I think what you guys need to take, what I took away from Mitch Mr. Reed, Mitch McConnell, from his little, his empty threats is that What that shows me is he knows that if the Dems pass stuff that people like, they can't go back and undo it. And the most recent example of this, of course, is Obamacare. What could you guys take out? You couldn't take out the pre-existing conditions. You couldn't take out the joint where parents could keep their kids on the insurance for 20 until they were like 26 years old. You couldn't take out all the stuff that people liked. And then when you couldn't take that out, what are you left with? Like, what are you taking out? So Harry Reid, like, he knows this. He knows if they put stuff in that people like, they can't undo it. Like, these people who represent the corporate class, the ruling class, whatever you want to call them, they have been bitching and moaning about quote unquote entitlements for decades. Yet they can't do shit with Social Security. They can't do shit with Medicare because people love those programs. So no matter Democrat, Republican, like voters, they universally love those programs. So McConnell knows that if the Dems go in and they get stuff done for people, it's going to be next to impossible to undo it.
Yeah, I mean, Social Security has been around since the freaking 30s. Since the 30s. And trust me, they've tried. They've tried many, many, many times. Bill Clinton tried to privatize Social Security, and it was saved by a woman named Monica Lewinsky. The Monica Lewinsky scandal derailed the Clinton agenda in his second term that included a privatization of Social Security, because Clinton was basically a Republican in Democrat clothing. George W. Bush tried majorly to privatize Social Security in 2006. It was a dream of the Republican Party forever to privatize Social Security and turn them into like these 401k bullshit fucking and got destroyed. Like people. Like it's the one thing people wake up to, like, no. You're not doing it.
You're not doing it. And matter of fact, even Donald Trump, when he was running for stuff in 2015 and 16, he was like, I don't know why Republicans even touch Social Security and Medicare. It's a loser. People love those programs. And so again, that's why you see this veiled threats. But we also have to take it back to the Democrats, because again, you mentioned that voting rights thing. So they're like, let's not abolish the filibuster. Let's do the Dem thing and let's make a democracy provision where we do it for voting rights. Let's do it for this. And then we're going to do, and it's like, just stop it. Just stop it. And the only reason that they would be against it, it's hard for me. Like, either you want to pass this stuff or you don't. You're either willing to do the stuff that'll get this stuff passed or you're not. Sorry, Nando, I cut you off.
No. It's I see a certain logic to it in that you need to give, a certain senator from West Virginia an ability to save face, because he said in unequivocal terms that he will not abolish the filibuster. So you can just say like, okay, we're not going to abolish something called a filibuster. We're just going to basically abolish it and keep it in name, but not give it any teeth. There's an argument to be made to do that. Politics is often just about saving face. And it's one of those things, like even if they reformed it to be like the pre-Mitch McConnell era or the pre-1970s really, but McConnell's really the one that kind of took it to a new level, which is where you could do a filibuster without actually doing the filibuster, the traditional filibuster, like in Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, or when senators go up there and read Green Eggs and Ham or whatever the fuck. Like obviously at some point, like they're going to run out of steam and you can just vote on the thing. But like what they have now is this thing where they can just do it without even.
They don't even have to lift a finger to basically thumb their noses at democracy. Like they don't even have to move. They don't they just, they basically send out an email like, yeah, I'm going to filibuster. All right, we won't bring it up for a vote.
Yeah.
Like, what?
So I see, I mean, it is encouraging that there's movement on it, like it is encouraging to see Biden, who is a lifelong senator, more open to the idea when he was against it forever. It is encouraging to see even Manchin has said a few, kind of left the door open a little bit, because they do need to pass a ton of shit in order to survive the next 4 years. They just need to pass a ton of shit. The COVID bill is a good start, but they need to pass the infrastructure bill.
Pass that infrastructure bill, pass the put a bunch of people in those jobs, pay them very livable wages, and watch.
Donald Trump won South Texas, like overwhelmingly with traditional Democratic areas on the Mexican border, overwhelmingly Mexican Americans there voted for him in historic numbers in 2020 for a simple reason: the wall. And it's not because they hate immigrants. It's because the wall created motherfucking jobs. And he poured so much money into ICE down there that it was like a works WPA, like FDR, like, yeah, it's an awful thing and we hate it, but like if you're some fucking Mexican American guy in South Texas and you get offered a nice unionized public sector job that pays decently and has job security, that's pretty good.
Keep that dude
so
in
the wall
office.
and exactly. So the wall and the expansion of ICE was essentially like a huge jobs program for the border. So that's why those border counties voted for Trump. That's pretty simple. So like if the Democrats were smart, they'd do a similar thing on infrastructure. They do a similar thing on expanding voting rights just dramatically. I mean, that would help them so much. Passing DC statehood, which is a no-brainer. The Puerto Rican one is much more complex. DC statehood is a no-brainer. Like it just not even, there's no argument against it. You cannot even consider an argument against it. It's just like so obvious. So they need to do it, and they need to do something, because if not, they're gonna have to sit on their ass for a year until they can do budget reconciliation a year from now. And as we saw this time around with the fucking bullshit Senate parliamentarian, there's limits to what you can pass through reconciliation. They couldn't pass the $15 minimum wage, even though they said they wanted to. So it is encouraging that there is some movement on it. Hopefully it changes. I mean, again, like I think you're seeing, we've talked about it before, that because of the change in the sort of liberal hegemony from an ideological standpoint, Biden could end up being like one of the most popular presidents of our lifetime. I mean, this $2 trillion stimulus is gonna be a fucking boom for the economy, and it's coming off of COVID. There's so much pent up energy. I mean, you're already starting to see people outside of bars in New York City fucking, like. So you can imagine kind of like a huge recovery given like the size of the stimulus. I mean, it's not just the checks, the direct payment checks, but everything else that goes into it. It's just money pumped into the economy, which has stimulative effects. So if they manage to pass a few of these other things that entrench those gains, because right now this is just pure money, they need to change the rules to entrench those gains. And if they do that, then they'll be in a much stronger
in the
position.
cat daddy
to do that, they need
because
to
again,
yeah.
You know, and it's important because we got to talk about the other side. It's this idea, you know, certain corporatist Dems, which I don't know. I don't give them the benefit of the doubt. It always sounds like they're always coming up with excuses to do nothing for people. And certain corporatist Dems are like, yo, it should be our job to, you know, at least bring it to Republicans to get them on board with stuff, to do the compromise, the work of government, basically bipartisanship for the sake of bipartisanship. And then, you know, the reason those arguments are worthless and stupid is the stimulus. Biden comes out, he basically campaigns on it. He basically campaigns for it after being elected and is like, yo, this is what we're going to do. This is why we need to do it. Yada, yada, yada. Republicans, do you want to have it? Nope. Not a single person fucking votes for it in either the House or the Senate. It gets passed, and the day it gets passed, there's Republicans taking credit for it. So these motherfuckers won't vote on something that they know is popular, but yet will take credit for it afterwards, talking out of both sides of their mouths. So it's like this idea that like you didn't get a single Republican vote on something that has 70% approval rating in America. You're done. It's over. And so, yeah, man, hopefully we're moving in the right direction. Again, hopefully me and Nando will continue to be wrong about sleepy Joe Biden and the tepid responses that establishment Dems are attracted to.
We're not exactly, I mean, what we're, you know, we are we're not, Joe Biden is just he's always been, this is what we always knew about Joe Biden, is that he's much more of a weather vane than other people, you know, like he's just kind of like, he doesn't believe in anything. He just kind of is a weather vane. And because the country has moved so much farther left, or their base, the Democratic base has moved a lot further left on a lot of key issues, he's just responding to that. And, you know, like that's really what it is. He's not like a hardened ideologue in a way that Obama was. You know, like Obama had an idea of what, you know, he wanted to
moderation.
Do.
What's his fucking... consensus building. That's his ideology. Yeah. Consensus building.
Yeah. And Biden, because he's been in the Senate for so long, you know, he's seen it all in a way, and he doesn't give a shit about any of it. So as long as there's political pressure, he responds to it. I think that's still true about Biden. I mean, it's, you know, he's still kind of like a craven, awful dude in many ways, and he's still, you know, on foreign policy, you're seeing the opposite. You're seeing an entrenchment of all the Donald Trump awful policies, whether it's Iran, whether it's Latin America, whether it's the hostility towards Russia and China, which continues. And was all like Trump created. And Biden's just like, yeah, we're going to do all that. Like, you know, policy towards the Palestinians in the Middle East, all of the awful things that were done during the Trump era have been solidified by Biden in the first few months. He's
already kissing the ring of Saudi Arabia. He loves them. We love Saudi.
Yeah, they were like, yeah, he was like, we know that Mohammed bin Salman ordered the hit on Khashoggi. And you know what? We're very angry about it, but we're not going to do anything about it. Like, okay, so then what is...
Weak. Yeah. You're weak on Saudi, Joe Biden. Yeah. All right, so we move on, of course, to just horrible stuff. Pfizer had a meeting with its they had an investor call, which, because the company is public, like, these things are made public. Like, you can, because theoretically I can buy stock in Pfizer, like, they have to talk to us. And this freaking dude, one of Pfizer's lobbyists, essentially said that, one, we're going to make a shit ton of money because, hold on, let me just slow down, just so people understand. Yeah. Countries in the third world, countries in South America, countries in Africa, countries all over the world have been begging the United States and these pharmaceutical companies, the United States government, by the way, they've been lobbying them to get rid of the patent on the vaccine so that these countries can get to manufacturing their own vaccines in their own backyards, and then start developing like other stuff in and around that vaccine, right? So of course, Pfizer has been like, hell no, we haven't squeezed out every single last dollar out of this vaccine. Not that they haven't made a profit. Not that they haven't made a sizable one. They think they haven't made enough a profit. Not that Pfizer took a loss on this, which, by the way, if you did take a loss on saving the lives of millions upon millions of people, most people would think that was like a freaking worthy loss. But no, Pfizer, because the pharmaceutical companies, I mean, if ever there were art capitalists in today's society, it's the freaking pharmaceutical. Like, they won't turn a buck on anything. And of course, our government is helping them. And like, no, we're going to support not releasing the patent on the freaking vaccine, guys. They've already made billions upon billions on it. And on this call, the guy's like, look, we see potential opportunities in booster shots. We see potential opportunities in all kinds of, usages for our vaccine. So, we're going to make even more money. You guys should be even more excited on Wall Street about what we're about to do. Which again, before we even get into it, this is why tracking the market to see like how well the country's doing is just a stupid idea. But yeah, Nando, this is the kind of shit that this show was made to cover. It's like, how do you justify this? Like, in any like conscionable way?
Well, it's capitalism, baby. I mean, that's the logic of capitalism. That's the logic of the market. When you have functions that should be for the benefit of humanity outsourced to private interests that do it for the benefit of their shareholders. I mean, that's what it is. It is inevitable that Pfizer would want to do this. If the CEO of Pfizer were the direct descendant of Jesus Christ and a perfectly moral person and said, no, you know what? We're going to give this patent away for free because it's the right thing to do. He'd be fired the next day and replaced by someone. That's what I'm saying. Like, so it's not, I think when I talk about like the capitalist class and things like this, it's not about whether they're good or bad people. It doesn't matter. Like, if they're good people, they'll just get replaced by someone who's willing to do it. And there will be someone who's willing to do it, to be like, no, I'm going to squeeze as much profit as I can. Yeah,
I'll be your CEO. Yeah, I'll have a private jet. Like, fuck it. I'll be more than willing to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And, to be clear, what the countries in the global South are asking for is not for vaccines. Like, I can understand if the United States, if you're Joe Biden and you have a certain amount of vaccines that you have to administer for your people, and someone's like in other countries are like, give us some of those vaccines. I can understand Joe Biden being like, no, because like I can see the potential backlash if there's like a vaccine shortage in the United States.
The Dems love Africa more than they love.
Yeah, they're starting to ship vaccines across instead of like.
You can already hear it.
I get that, and I don't blame them. But that's not what the countries in the global South are asking for. They're asking for the ability to manufacture their own vaccines. They just want the technology so that then they can manufacture their own. Cost zero to the United States. It will not affect a single vaccine dosage in the United States. Really won't. The only thing it would hurt is the bottom line of these pharmaceutical companies. Because they're looking at the globe, like they've given away the vaccine in the United States for free. If you go get vaccinated today, it's for free in the United States. But they're looking at the global South and they're seeing, oh, we're gonna make some money off of this, and it really is just a very striking example of both how the U.S. imposes laws abroad, especially intellectual property laws, patent laws, things like that, in order to protect private companies at home. So that they can protect their profits. They really do this. Someone could, in theory, like in Africa, figure out, or like through a whistleblower, or just hear like what the vaccine cocktail is and then manufacture it. But the United States has rigged the international rules of the game to make that illegal. And, so that they wouldn't be able to do that even if they tried. And it just goes to show how these functions, the functions that better society, like medicine. We need medicine. They cannot be left to private actors because they will do it in a way that maximizes profit, not social welfare. So the argument that conservatives and libertarians make is like, oh, if we prevent Pfizer from making a profit this time around, the next time we have a pandemic, no one's going to develop the vaccine because there won't be a profit motive to do it. And it's like, that's insane. The government can just like pay people to do it. Like the government has so much money. They could just be like, no, we're going to do this. So like scientist guy, I'm going to give you some money and you can fucking develop the vaccine.
Yes,
you know, like
period.
You don't need like the profit motive. Yeah. And it's precisely the profit motive for things like vaccines is the reason why we didn't have the vaccine the day coronavirus hit, because these coronaviruses have been around. We know that they exist. We knew that this was a threat. There's been public health officials warning about a potential pandemic. But because
there wasn't an epidemic, there was no opportunity to make money, so there was no reason to do it.
It was too risky.
It's too risky.
Exactly. It's too risky for a private company because you don't know when the pandemic's going to hit. So you can spend billions of dollars developing a vaccine, and it may hit now or it may hit in 30 years. You don't know when it's going to hit. But a government that is not tied to the profit motive can see these warning indicators and finance the vaccine development and be ready for the most
powerful entity in the history of man, aka the United States federal government. That's the point of this, so that you can do shit like, spend a shit ton of money on something potentially happening. So that when and if it does, we don't have this freaking calamity. Like, and I think people don't understand that so much goes into how we spend a whole fucking year dealing with this. How can it take us a year to get out of this? Well, here's why. There's all these contributing factors. And like you just said, investment into public goods. Like a lot of people, when they hear public goods investments, they think of like YMCAs or some shit. Like, no, this is investment in a public good, bro. Like avoiding complete catastrophe and calamity in the case of a freaking viral outbreak. Yeah, that's for the good of the public. It may not make money for people if we develop stuff that we never have to use, but shit, man. Look, just think about something like that damn fighter plane, the F-2, whatever,
the F-35,
the F-45, 35, that never worked. Like
that decapitates the pilots when they
decapitates the pilots. The amount of money and resources that went into that crap. And people are going to tell you, well, that's to defend our freedom. And no, the fuck, it's not. It's not.
It's funny because the F-35, I mean, what it is essentially is a transfer of wealth from taxpayers, meaning all of us, to the owners of private military contractors. That's it. It's just funneling money. It's over $1 trillion at this point since the early 90s when the F-35 program started. It's just, we're going to take money from taxpayers and we're just going to hand it to the owners of private industries. Meanwhile, the United States is forcing other countries to buy the shitty plane. Like there's a big diplomatic, it's like not even worth getting into, but there was like a big diplomatic kind of kerfuffle with Turkey because the United States wanted Turkey to buy a bunch of these fucking planes. And Turkey's like, I want the Russian planes. And the United States is like, you cannot buy the Russian planes. You have to buy the planes that decapitate the pilots. The planes that, because of the way the cockpit was designed, the pilots can't turn their head around like that. They can't look, like in Top Gun when they're like, oh shit, he's behind me. Like they can't do that. So what they did was they installed a camera, kind of like in your car now, when you back up, it has like a little camera back there. So like they could see behind them through a little camera. The problem is, because you're in the fucking atmosphere and there's like humidity and shit, the camera would get foggy whenever they would fly through like rain or like little droplets of water would get in there, so they couldn't fucking see behind them. So it's just like the stupidest thing in the world, but it's over $1 trillion. It's just been funneled from us, like our wealth taken from us and handed to the investors of Raytheon and McDonnell Douglas and Boeing and whatever the fuck military.
And again, and not spending it on the kind of thing we just discussed ad nauseum. Instead, farming out that job to Pfizer so that they can freaking make money on, sick people in Africa and South America. Like it's unconscionable. There's just no way to put it. Of course, we always have to mention this. Not a single person from the Democratic Party has spoken out about this at all. Wait, hold on. It's
barely been in the news.
Bernie Sanders,
except for young Bernard. Young Bernard did say that the WTO, the World Trade Organization, should waive the patent rights on the COVID vaccine so that any country in the world can just access the technology and manufacture it on their own to service people. And the thing is, like, there is, we live in a global economy. Like, we need everyone in the world to be vaccinated, like, because we know now, like, for example, it's happening in Brazil when there's like large countries of people that don't have the vaccine and COVID is just raging around. There's variants of the disease. Like, mutations happen and they can spread and they're worse. And the thing, like, we need everyone to be vaccinated so we can kill this thing, not just in the United States, all over the world. Because, like, I'm sorry, we live in global economy, global supply chains. People
One
are
world
flying
government
all the world all the time. Yeah. So we need to do this, but it's crazy that it's the United States is blocking it in order to protect the profits of Pfizer.
Yeah. From the depressing realities of American capitalism to Spain, man. Spain, Nando. You brought this to my attention. Spain is about to do a little dance, a little bachata, if you will, even though I know that's Dominican.
Yeah. A little flamenco.
Flamenco, if you will, with the idea of a 4-day work week, man. Talk to the people about this, Nando.
So, yeah, I mean, the left is in power in Spain. So Spain is right now ruled by a coalition government between the center left, which in Spain is called the Socialist Party, but it's really kind of like the Democrats.
Ew.
And then the far left, which is kind of like if Bernie had a party.
Wow.
It would. So they're in an alliance right now in the parliament, and that's who rules Spain right now. Another left-wing party, a much smaller one, which was a splinter of this other kind of Bernie-crat party that I was discussing, came up with this idea of doing a pilot program for a 4-day work week, basically reducing the work week from 40 hours to 32. You work 8 hours a day, 4 days a week. And what they're going to do is essentially the government's going to give companies money to subsidize this. So like the companies that sign up for this, I think they're talking about like 200 companies. The government's going to fund it 100% in year one, like 50% year two, and 33% year three to see how it affects, profits and all that stuff. The argument being that everyone just kind of works too much in these kind of bullshit service economy jobs, which is what we live in now. We don't live in a pure manufacturing economy like we used to, right? I mean, when you live in manufacturing, in a manufacturing economy, there was a very clear 1-to-1 ratio between like man hours
and goods produced
to productivity.
Yeah.
Goods produced. Like, yeah, a guy working 8 hours a day, 5 days a week was going to mine X amount of coal. If he worked 2 more days a week, he was going to, mine that much more coal.
Right.
But when you're living in kind of like these economies where it's not directly, related to the stuff that you make, it's much more of like these knowledge economies and service work and all that stuff. Like, it is not
like,
clear
why do you need to work 50 hours a week at Facebook? Like, why?
Yeah.
Why? You
exactly.
don't. You absolutely don't.
You don't. No, and there's all kinds of, studies that show like if you do work less, you actually are more productive in the time you are working, you're not as burnt out, blah, 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 blah. But really it goes back to like, I mean, we talk about this a lot, the 40-hour work week and the 5-day work week is something that was fought for bitterly by
and hold on before you
in,
move on, Nando, because I think it's important that you point this out, and I think it's important that we point this out. Like, somebody might be listening to this and like, well, that's nice that that's Spain, but that's pie in the sky. We could never do that. We could never get that done here. It would be impossible, and blah 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 blah. And this is like, bruh, that's exactly how people thought about child labor, but specifically about this 40-hour work week. And then if you running me ragged like this, you better give me some OT behind it, and the 5-day work week. Like, yo, bro, I need days off. Like, the labor movement had to fight for this.
You guys have heard of something called May Day, right? May Day, which is international work, like the International Day of Workers, came about from something called the Haymarket Affair in Chicago. This was in the 1880s. The Haymarket Affair was a strike for the 8-hour day, essentially, in Chicago. That was then basically violently put down by the government. The leaders of that strike were all hanged, and it became a national outcry. That's what led to May Day.
Damn.
The 8-hour day was fought for with blood in this country, and it was something that was very bitter. And the slogan was like, on average, a human being sleeps 8 hours a day. So it'd be like, 8 hours for sleep, 8 hours for work, and 8 hours for whatever the fuck I want, because there's 24 hours in a day. And that was fought for bitterly, and it was won through struggle, through labor struggle. Ditto with the 5-day work week. Both of those things were won through struggle. They've become kind of like just the way, like they just become so standard. But like this was over 100 years ago. But they've just become kind of ingrained in our psyche as just kind of natural law. But there's no reason why we couldn't struggle for more time off. I mean, the amount of bullshit work that goes into the economy these days is like astounding. Like we have technology. We don't need to be working so much to be able to take care of everyone, to be able to feed all of us, to be able to house all of us, to be able to clothe all of us, to be able to do all the stuff we want. We really don't need to be working that much. We just really don't. But we work more and more. And since the advent of the iPhone and email and things like that, now it's gotten to the point where we don't even stop working when we get home. I mean, you guys might recognize this. Sometimes you leave the office, but the emails keep coming in. You're pressured to respond late
Slacks,
at night, on the weekends if something comes in. Slacks come in, all that thing. So like really we're working kind of around the clock with very, very little time off. It's very difficult for people to disconnect. So yeah, it's very, very exciting to see this happening in Spain. It's just obviously still an experiment. It'll basically matter whether the left can stay in power in the next few years, whether they can actually implement something like this on a large scale. But it's definitely something worth watching, and it's something that is worth thinking about. Like, it's not just about wages. Yeah. It's not just about the policies we like, but time off, like time to just live your life and not be strapped to your computer or your job or your
this
boss
fucking I'm asleep when I die bullshit. It's like, bro, enrich yourself, man. Do something that don't gotta do with your freaking job, bro. You know what I'm saying? Spend time with the people who you love, man. Take up a hobby. Do all kinds of stuff for your own mental health and sort of, self-enrichment, man. Like, I know for a fact a lot of people not having to be, I know a few people who not having to be in the office every single day. And, especially here in LA, when you don't live by your job, it's like an hour commute there, hour commute back. Just being able to be in solitude and working on things on themselves or discovering things about themselves that they didn't even know or wouldn't have been able to do without that time from the fake ass rat race, man. It's been, that contribution has been immeasurable to people's lives. So it's just something we wanted you guys to think about, because I don't know. Y'all know we ain't trying to be working on. I don't think anybody listens to this show and thinks of me and Nando as grinders.
No. Rise and grind, baby. Get that paper.
Get that paper. Anyway, that's our show for this week. Thank you all for subscribing, man. Thank you all for checking us out. All the new listeners, so many people. Not gonna front, because I've been on the Young Turks a lot recently. Shouts to all my peoples there, Anna, Jank, my man Brett, Amber, who's working with me on some shit that y'all gonna love when y'all see it. Just all the people over there, Judith, everybody over there. So many people from the Young Turks community, obviously they're like the biggest thing in independent left media, have reached out to me and be like, yo, I fuck with what you do. I've been checking out Woke Bros because of TYT. So shouts to all the new listeners who we are now indoctrinating Nando into our evil sex cult. Applications are in the mail, y'all.
Who wouldn't want to be in a sex cult with me?
Nobody, exactly. It's the best sex cult ever. Even better than Scientology. Just shouts to everybody, man.
Or the Catholic Church.
Shouts to everybody, or the Catholic Church, exactly. Shouts to everybody who has been tuning in. We appreciate you guys' patronage of this show. Make sure you subscribe to the Bomb feed, listening to Black Opinions Matter on Monday. The Wednesday service, of course, growing up the same. Make sure you become a subscriber to the Friday mailbag. All of that good stuff. Cinephobe, you know what it is, man. We'll see you guys next week. Fernando, I'm Wos. Also for Rob, keeping the trains running on time on the 1s and 3s. Rob Lopez, the producer. We're out of here. Peace.